The XP-82 was developed by North American. It was requested by Hap Arnold, the director of the Army Air Corps at the time, as we were losing an awful lot of single-engine Mustangs and their pilots because they were trying to escort B-29s from Saipan to Japan and back. B-29s would cruise at 300 plus. The single-engine Mustangs, depending on power settings, would cruise at 240, 260, 280. Could not keep up the 29s, thus burn a whole bunch more fuel. Edgar Schmude, the head designer for the Mustang series for North American, had pencil sketched out a multi-engine Mustang back in 1941 and showed it to Hap Arnold. Hap looked at it and says, build it. The first flight of this airplane was 15 April 45. It didn't fly well at all because of the upsweeping props. About a month later, 2 months later, Hap Arnold showed up in North American. You need to fix this problem, you're going to lose the contract. They swapped the engines, the rest was history. So then the airplane went to NACA, the predecessor to NASA. It was brought up there where it was a test bed for the 8-gun pod. There was an 8-gun pod that would hang underneath the center section, plus the radar pod, which stuck out beyond the propellers, so the propellers would not disturb the signal. And then it was bombs and rockets. It flew with NACA from approximately midsummer 1945 until November 1949, when it landed on an icy runway and skidded off the side of the runway and buried one landing gear and bent the center section. So Walter Saplata heard about the airplane having the accident and the plans to scrap it. So he went up there and he worked out a deal with them to buy it for $300. And they kept the engines and kept the props. Back in '92, I'd heard about this place and I was in the airplane business, so I called and asked if I could come by and look, and I did. So I was up there again in 2007, December 23rd, 2007, doing an IRS appraisal. So I looked under some sheet metal. I said, oh, here's another Mustang. He said, no, that's an 82. And I said, you sold your 82? He said, I had two of them. This is the XP-82, the twin Mustang, the first one to fly. And I said to him, can I buy it? He says, no, we're probably going to sell something in April. I said, can I put my hat in the ring and buy this one from you when you're ready to sell it? So I knew very well in December that if anybody else had heard about that airplane, any Mustang collector, it had been gone. So what I did is I started going to anybody else in the country that I knew had any 82 parts. And I told nobody what I was planning on doing. They all thought that I was going to try to piece together an 82. In April 2008, Margaret called me, Miss Margaret called me, I always called her Miss Margaret, and she invited me up and we would like to talk about the 82. We were offered a figure years earlier. I said, what was that figure? And she told me the figure, and I go, that's way too little money. I say, Miss Margaret, I will never cheat you. It's worth lots more than that. And Walter looks at me like I have green hair, and he says, I've never had anybody offer me more than what I was asking for something. I said, tell me more and I'll tell you when to stop. And we come up to about 6 times of what they originally wanted, and I wrote them a check. So I got all the parts. Mike Nixon built both of our engines. MT Propeller stepped up and built propellers. Pat Harker has been extremely helpful to us. We've been able to go up and take lots of pictures, lots of measurements of his airplane. Basically the same airplane with Allison engines, everything firewall forwards is different. It's an extremely complicated airplane, but a very straightforward design. And most people think it's just 2 Mustang fuselages put together. No, there are only 5 parts that are the same: elevator, trim wheel, canopy crank, the accumulator for the hydraulic system, half of the tail wheel, because this is a through axle and not a stub axle like a Mustang has, and the trim tab hinge points for the elevator and the rudder trim tab. That's it. Everything's different. The canopy, the windshields, all the cowling, all the landing gear, the wheels, tires, and the brakes, the entire hydraulic system, everything is different.
We got all of the drawings from North American through a guy in California, and so if anybody needed a part or wanted to know what this was or where that went, I have all the drawings and I could look those up.
There were 272 airplanes built, 2 prototypes, which were Merlin engined, and then 20 following, of which were B models, which also had Merlin engines. So there were 22 Merlin engine ones built and 250 Allison powered ones.
Our whole point here is to keep them flying, so to speak, and anything I could do to put another one in the sky, I'll do that.
I think they deserve to make the Oshkosh show. They've been 10 years on taking this bunches of piles of scrap and making this incredible airplane.
This is not the longest project I've done, but it's approaching that. We've worked on it now 10 years, and we have approximately 203,000 man and woman hours in it. And that's including all the subcontract shops that have built everything.
It's been rewarding, and it's going to be, I don't know the words. I'm just glad it happened, I'll put it that way.
There's some kind of a provenance with this airplane. There's an order to this in the universe that I don't understand, because there were too many coincidences of finding engines and finding this. I feel like it's another mechanical miracle.
As a bomber guy, usually bomber people are always interested in bombers, you know, B-17s, B-25s, so forth like that. Usually they're not interested in fighters and bombers together. But when I saw the 82, it was love at first sight. I looked at that as someday I will own one of those and someday I will fly one. The dream is just about ready to come true.